How you doing, everybody? Nick DiVirgilio here, my very special guest in studio, John Palmer of Tama Drums, and we're here to talk to you about the Star drum line. John, welcome.
Thank you, Nick.
Thanks so much for joining me here.
Yeah.
It's great to have you, and it's really fantastic to be sitting behind these beautiful Tama Star drums.
Yeah, it's inspiring for sure. Great to hear you play them.
Thank you very much. I'm sitting behind the maple kit. John is behind the bubinga kit. And over here on my left, which you'll see in just a second, is the walnut Star kit. So we're going to go through each one and talk a little bit about them. You can kind of give us the details of what these drums are all about. So why don't you give us the lowdown on what Star is?
All right, so the overall concept of Star, Tama just decided back in 2010, 11 to just set out to make the best drum set they can make. So R&D'd it for a long time, probably even before then. The series was released in 2013. Right. They're handmade in Japan at our Seto, Japan factory. So it really was just an exercise of just taking apart every component of the drums and refining the components to really make the most resonant, warm, full sound, the best Tama drums that we could possibly make.
Well, I think they've definitely done that. And what's cool about these is that you get unique feel and unique sound from each wood that the kits are made of. Mm-hmm. This maple kit's very punchy. It's throaty, it projects, it's got some volume to it. Peter Erskine, who's a great Tama endorser, made his last record here, used these exact maple drums on his kit, the Dr. record, which you should all go check out if you haven't heard it. It's fantastic. And these drums really sang on that record. Yeah. But here, I mean, what's cool about these drums too is they work in any style of music. Yeah. I mean, he did a jazz thing, but these are great rock drums too.
They sound great. I know you've played them in a lot of applications, and just the maple sound, they just sound really pure. Yeah. I mean, it's kind of the pure drum sound, you know, that I hear. It's well balanced. You get great punch and attack, and then you get a nice luscious low end. So
tell us about the shells, the plies, and all that kind of stuff.
Yeah, so for our Star maple drums, there's a solid core. It's 2 millimeter thick, which is thicker. It's kind of used like a thicker center core. And the total drum layup is 5-ply 5 millimeter with that center core. So they're super thin shells. And then they have our sound focus rings on them, which are 5 millimeter as well. So that balances out the thin shell and gives it a little body. The dynamic bearing edge that we use, we actually cut the edge a little bit closer in from the edge of the shell so that there's a little more head contact. That's 3.5 millimeters away from the edge of the shell. And then the dynamic part of it, it's basically a 45 degree angle, but then it's sort of curved. So we can't really say it's 45 degree angles or 45 degree all the way through. Right. The dynamic part means it kind of, there's an arc to it. I'm not sure, you know, how that came about, but you know, I know we did extensive testing on the shell materials, and this is what we came up with. Is like, yeah, that's the sound we want.
And it's working.
Yeah.
Well, hey, John, fancy seeing you over there behind, because weren't you just sitting here a second ago?
You got to change them up sometimes,
I
Nick.
tell you, it's the magic of video. It's very magical. So, all right, let's get into the bubinga kit. All right. Luscious, deep brown color. The wood grain looks fantastic with the nice high gloss lacquer. So give us the details of the bubinga kit, please.
So that's the natural Indian laurel finish that you're looking at. Yeah. And that's exterior ply that is over the bubinga shell. So the bubinga shell is constructed differently from the maple shell. It doesn't have the center ply that's 2 millimeter thick. It's all bubinga. It's 5-ply. And it's super thin. It's 4.5 millimeters. So it's our thinnest shell that we have on Star. But the beauty of it is our sound focus ring is 9 millimeters thick. So it's a really thick sound focus ring that works with the thinness of the shell wall to give you that real deep punch, but also those drums are singing because they're so thin. Sure. So that's really the benefit of that. I should also tell you, when we make our drums and all of our Tama drums, when we're laminating the shell together, we don't use just a regular vertical shell seam. We do a horizontal seam. Right. So when we're putting the wood plies into the mold, we actually tap down and make sure that they're fully aligned, and it adds pressure, and it adds to make sure that the seams are super tight, and it's basically making the most musical chamber we can make.
That's some great info right there.
Cool
I didn't know that. That's awesome. Now I know the sizes are a little bit different here, but It is a different tone. Bubinga
Yeah.
definitely has a different vibe and a sound to it than the maple for sure.
Yeah.
It is warmer, not as sort of throaty as
Right.
maple, you know what I mean? At least to my ear.
Yeah, right.
But it's definitely warm and definitely musical.
Deep, kind of
Yeah.
darker.
For sure.
Yeah, yeah. But they still punch. So you get the explosion attack, but they just seem to want to live down a little lower. You know?
Right. Well, hey, this is weird, because a second ago you were okay.
Modern
Anyway,
technology, Nick.
now I'm sitting behind this fantastic walnut kit. Now, I have a soft spot in my heart for walnut. I think it's a great wood for drum making. It has a cool tone to it. It's a little bit different than the others. So why don't we get into the details of the walnut kit here?
Cool. So the Star Walnut is, when we first came out with Star Series, we just had the maple and the bubinga. So the walnut was an addition that came after the launch.
Okay.
The key difference on this drum set is it does not have sound focus rings. So it's a straight sided interior shell.
Right.
It is pretty conventional in the way it's made, cross-laminated, and it is 6-ply, 5mm on toms, and then it's 7-ply, 6mm on the bass drum.
Right.
So again, they're thin shells.
That's typical between the whole line. It's the thin
they're super
shell.
thin, yeah. And you know, and as we said, the bubinga and the maple kits have the sound focus rings. The walnut kit does not. So you get a very dynamic sound on the walnut, and it really emphasizes the low end, which you can hear.
I describe drums in vibe terms a lot of times, and I know that's not very technical, but you do get a vibe when you sit behind kits, and there's just something that they give to the player.
Right.
This looks great, and that's like with all these Star drums. They have a nice feel to them, and just a vibe that you want to play music. It's really, that's what it's all about. It inspires you to want to play more.
So,
and it's a lot of fun.
Yeah, some drums, you're right. Every drum set sort of gives a different personality to it, right?
Yeah.
Some are hard to play for certain players.
Right.
Some are easier to play. Some are softer. I mean, physically, they just, sometimes your sticks just want to like ooze into the drum heads.
Yeah.
I think in all of our drum, each of the Star Series have die-cast hoops,
Right.
which are typically pretty, heavy and hard and a little brittle. They don't give as much as a triple flange, but I think with the thinness of the shell and the way the dynamic bearing edge works and the sound focus rings, it does give a playing experience that you feel pretty comfortable laying into those things.
And we're going to get into the finishes here in just a second and the hardware on these kits, but before I do another playing example, the finish on this kit has sort of a matte look to it compared to the high gloss lacquer of the other ones. So you get a different vibe as far as that's concerned. You can almost see the grain. It's almost a 3D sort of a thing with the grain on this walnut kit.
Yeah, so it's Japanese sen exterior ply, which is kind of a boutique looking wood and exotic looking wood. And we treated it, you can see with the the black burst and just really created something that they just look awesome because a bit of the paint gets into the wood grain, and then we sort of treat it so it doesn't saturate too much in there. So it really gives a kind of a three-dimensional look in there.
Cool. All right, John, let's talk about hardware on these Star drums because I know they come with some really fantastic, cool, high-end, just really neat hardware. So I'm going to take the cymbal off right here.
Okay.
And let's first talk about the tom mount. This Star tom mounting system is very cool. One of the coolest features, you can get into the details too, but the way these toms just come on and off, their memory locks are cool. You slide this little lever over, the tom comes right off.
Right.
I mean, that is simple. So let's get into the details here. Tell us about this.
So that's called a quick lock system, okay? And that is just simply slide that over. It's also encased in rubber on the inside. So not only does it function easy, quick and easy, but it also allows the drum to resonate fully without the vibrations traveling down into the stand.
Right.
So we use rubber and all kinds of little components all the way around the drums to maximize the resonance throughout. So there you go, you hit on a big one. And it is actually the suspension system. It's a upgrade to our StarCast system. Right. This is our super resonant mounting system. It basically takes the integrated system and our StarCast system that's already molded into the hoops and suspended from the hoops, not the tension rods. There's no stress on the shell. And then we add a third pivot point down at the bottom. So really the whole thing is to just eliminate any stress on the shell, which can decrease vibrations.
Right.
So that's what you got there. Die-cast hoops. We should certainly talk, and let everybody know die-cast hoops are what we use on Star drums throughout top and bottom.
And die-cast gives good resonance, gives great rim shot sound. There's lots of cool benefits to having a die-cast hoop.
Lots, yeah. It's a full punchy sound, and again, it works with the thin shells just to produce the openness of the thin shells, but the punchy volume that we get is derived a lot from the die-cast tube for sure. Even the lug, right? You're just kind of pointing to the lug. It's gorgeous. It's a beautiful sort of Art Deco inspired piece, and it's a bridge lug. So the middle is sort of cut out, so there's very little air gap, so very minimal shell contact, and it just looks fantastic too.
Yeah, this is great hardware on these drums. Also, putting this tom back on, it's as easy as putting it on as it is taking it off. Just slide the lever back over and you're good to go. But when you want to adjust the height of the tom, and where it sits on the arm, the whole piece comes right off, and then it stays on.
Right.
Because you've moved this lever over.
Exactly.
So it's a really cool, innovative system altogether there. All right, let's talk about the floor tom legs.
Sure.
And that's a system as well, because little things a lot of people don't think about sometimes is kick drum spurs, floor tom legs, and what they actually do to a kit. They're a really important piece of a whole drum kit. So I'm going to pick up this floor tom here. Let's talk about these legs.
Okay. So quick lock mounting system, just like you described on the tom.
Same lever, comes right out.
Again, rubber encased on the bottom of the floor tom bracket. So we want to maximize the resonance. Resonance, we love resonance. You can always take the resonance down. There's many ways to do that, right? From from heads to accessories, but you can't put tone back into a drum or resonance back into it. So we want to start with a really nice resonant chamber, and the hardware part is really big, and it's a big part.
Sure.
Yeah.
The floor tom legs are long enough. Because that's a big deal.
You would know.
And the rubber feet are nice.
Yeah.
Because they really kind of take a lot of the brunt of the tone, doesn't just dissipate and go away.
Exactly. So they're super soft, so you can squeeze them. And there's a hollow chamber on the inside. So again, you're allowing the vibrations not to travel down into the leg and down into the floor.
Right.
We want to keep the vibration in the shell. Now as you play these, and these are super. It's pretty spongy, and you get a spongy feel. But, the playing experience, I think when most drummers are playing it, they're just feeling the floor tom's there, and it's
it definitely doesn't,
around.
It's not moving around like this at all. It moves when you're pushing it with your hand, but when you're playing it stays rock solid. It's totally easy,
Cool.
Very cool. All right, so let's go around to the front of the drum kit. Let's talk about spurs and claw hooks and all that stuff.
Sounds good.
All right, out in front of the kick drum now, let's talk about the claw hooks and the spurs. Again, in my mind, definitely very important parts of a drum kit, especially the spurs.
Yeah.
Claw hooks are a little more of a visual cool thing, but let's get into the details here.
Well, there's actually some audio applications or sonic applications on the claw hook as well, Nick.
Okay.
Yeah, so these are little details, and we're really getting into splitting hairs, but it's all those little details that add up that give you the experience, right? So the claw hook is very low profile. It's super small. It has a very thin padding on the inside, so doesn't have this huge thick padding in it. Again, we didn't want to overkill it. There's a little rubber washer on the inside, so when you take the tension rod off the lug, the key rod's not going to fall through. Nice little idea.
Of course.
Great thing. And then the other thing is you can see if you look closely that the back side of the claw hook is up off of the hoop.
Right,
so
it's only touching the front.
Exactly. Yeah. So, again, we wanted to have maximum resonance, and we feel like that's giving the drum the most opportunity to resonate.
Yeah, less metal touching the wood, right?
Exactly.
Definitely. Okay, now let's talk about these spurs. Spurs are a huge deal for me as a player because you don't want your kick drum to move. Yeah. That's the main thing,
Number one, right? Got to stay stable.
But these have a lot of cool benefits too, so let's get into some of these details.
Sure. So you get, first thing is you can't see it at all. To the naked eye, the way the spur works, it's actually a two-piece spur system.
Okay.
So you have the spur coming out of the spur holder, but then the bottom side of the spur in the rubber part where the extension of the spur goes out, that's a whole separate piece. So there's not a single rod running through the entire length of the spur.
Right. And also, let's move this stand out of the way a little bit. There is a lug screw right down here where the pokey part, that's the very technical term, the pokey part of the spur, you can either have it out or not have it out.
Correct.
Depending if you're like on a floor or on a carpet. But yeah, you just turn that little lug screw and the sticky part comes out or takes it back in.
Yep.
And then you also have notches on the spurs up and down to wherever you place the length of the spur.
Right.
It's always in that same spot. You remember where it is.
It's a great thing.
So those good things to know that your kit's going to be set up the same way.
And it's even. So if you know you're 2.5 notches on one side, you just go 2.5 notches on the other, and boom.
Yeah, you don't have to use the finger
exactly
method or any of that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
Yeah, so that's really great.
Good thinking. So, yeah, we love that. Thanks for checking the details.
Definitely. Okay, John, before we close out this video on these Star drums, let's talk about who the customer is for this particular product.
Okay, so they're beautiful drums, but they come at a price. And so, they're not for everybody. They are definitely for the discriminating drummer, the discriminating sound engineer or audio engineer, recording studio, somebody who is not a pro player, who just wants the best possible experience they can get on that instrument, kind of a boutique, high-end. They might stay in somebody's recording studio and never see the light of day, but if they bring fulfillment, to that drummer, that purpose, I think it's great. So they can be used in any application. So who's the customer? Sure. It's really just somebody who's really particular and meticulous about what they do.
Yeah, and if you're a fan of Tama,
you're
going to love this for sure.
Yeah.
So a lot of drummers, myself included, sometimes we get brand specific on stuff that we like, and Tama really stepped up their game on this particular kit for sure. And they've already, and all the other, the other lines that Tama makes, there's some fantastic drums in the other lines as well, and these are just really that kind of the icing on the cake. Really.
It's aspirational. It's our high end, and they're expensive and they sound like it.
Right.
And the cool thing that's working with Sweetwater organization is we do a lot of training on the Star series here, direct hands-on with sales engineers. So there's really that everything we covered in the videos today. That's educational material that should be fairly top of mind for the sales engineers, and they're just really knowledgeable about the product. It's pretty impressive, really.
John, thank you so much for joining me today, showing off these Star drums from Tama. They're fantastic drums, and I just want to thank you again for bringing the 3 kits. And also, I want to mention to everybody out there, these aren't the only colors that these drum kits come in.
Right.
They come in all kinds of different colors.
Huge array of colors.
There's a huge array, so it's not just the sort of natural finishes you see here. You can go crazy with yellows and blues and reds and all kinds of cool stuff. Also, if you have any comments or suggestions, please put them below this video in the text below. If you want any more information about this Tama product or any other Tama product, just contact your Sweetwater sales engineer. Thanks a lot for watching.